people have an expectation of what a running race looks like in their head, which isn't what we put on. When you say we're organising a race, people see London Marathon. They see thousands in their head. They see thousands of people running at speed,
like throwing water bottles.
Throwing water bottles on the floor and being really, really disrespectful to the land. And I think as soon as you communicate to them what you're trying to do, and you know it's a small event, that people are self-sufficient, they carry their own water bottles with them, and you kind of go into it, 99% of the people we've spoken to are amazing and supportive, and they want it to happen.
Hello, and welcome to Outlandish with me, Ed Scott. Outlandish is a new podcast for trail runners and other outlandish folk, focusing on the burgeoning trail running and adventure scene in the southeast of England. With this podcast, I want to show that adventure needn't just be the pastime of mountain folk, but is available to anyone within jogging distance of a line of dirt. Throughout Season 1, I'm going to be talking to some amazing people who love this part of the world and the adventures that you can have in it, starting with Chris Bradley. Chris is the founder and director of Runaway Adventures, an event organiser and community connecting trail runners in London and its surrounding counties. With a full calendar of trail races ranging from 10k to 50k, as well as regular meetups in places like the Chilterns and the North Downs, Runaway has quickly become one of the Southeast's premier trail running companies, thanks in no small part to Chris's meticulous organisational skills, his knack for finding and celebrating unsung routes away from classic go-to trails, and just the fact that he's genuinely a really nice guy who cares about the community that he's helped to build. I headed up to Runaway's office in Tottenham, North London in April 2022 when this podcast was recorded. It was great to find out more about what goes into hosting a successful race and delve a little bit into what makes Chris tick. If you enjoy the episode today, do give us a follow on Instagram at outlandish.run, or you can visit the website, which is also outlandish.run. Do hang around after the episode where I will talk a little bit about next week's guest, and there may be a couple of bonus clips to listen to at the end of the episode. And now, Chris Bradley. Chris Bradley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for welcoming me here at Runaway HQ. It's a beautiful space. How long have you been here?
So yeah, we're sat in Runaway HQ Tottenham at the moment. I've been here about.
Is there multiple branches?
No, there's not. Well, we like to think there's a Barcelona branch that Jan runs, but he's yet to show anything really for that.
Yeah, lazy branch.
Yeah. Now we've been here about a year, and yeah, it's a storage space, office, it's everything, and yeah, it's good fun. It's where all the ideas are made, really.
Have you been based in London since Runaway was formed?
Yeah, absolutely. So Runaway 2017 it was formed, right. And I mean back then, I can't remember exactly the first run that you came on, but the first kind of thing that we did was basically, and it was the whole idea was taking people out of London trail running. So I'm kind of a country person, grew up in Somerset, and I suppose moving to London is nice, but there's always a desire to want to leave it and find open places to run. And I think I was doing that a lot on my own on the weekends and working a lot behind a desk and in corporate environments. So it was kind of, can I use that experience I've got of the outdoors and show other people, and then can I maybe even make that into a business? And that was a big question mark. And I think the answer with that is no, you can't make that into a business. You can't make money out of taking people running. And I think quickly realised that wasn't really why we were doing it either. So, you take 10, 15 people out, you turn up at Euston, you go out to Tring, and you take someone for a run. You've got a whole day there basically meeting people that you wouldn't have met otherwise, but have something in common. And I think what's always really funny is there's people that I've met, I would say, I don't know, like 10, 15 times. And I've spent a day, probably 15 days, out running with them. and some of them I don't know what they do for a living, and I don't really know anything else about them other than they like trail running, and that subject just kind of can consume you for the whole day. And it's not like we're sort of awkwardly ignoring anything else. It's just that that's what's on our mind, and that's what we both like to talk about. And
I spoke about this with some other people about there's a massive relief sometimes when you spend time. We were talking specifically about ultra running, but it carries for trail running as well. When you spend time with people who get it, because often people don't get it, and they'll say things like, I don't even like driving that far, and things like that. And it's just very refreshing to be around people who get it.
Yeah, totally. So have I been in London the whole time? Yeah, so since 2017, we've been doing these meetups, I don't know, once a month, once every 3 weeks, let's say. And then that sort of evolved into races. I think the first race was 2019. And it, obviously to sort of start organising events at that time as not, it's a year before the pandemic, but at that time when you're sort of trying to grow, it's been I'm sure we'll get into it, but it's been a very interesting last 3 years.
Yeah, I'm sure. Just to take you back a bit, so you are from Somerset originally.
Yes.
Did you run there?
No, never.
Really?
Yeah. Well, lived there until I went to university, and then from university straight to London. And I was always one of these people that just thought, nah, running's not for me, because I've never enjoyed it. I've never gone for a run out of enjoyment. I've played sport, I've played football, I've played ultimate frisbee at university for like 3 years, but running never occurred to me that you could do it on your own and enjoy it until I think probably I was about 22, 23, and then you sort of there's definitely you know as you get older, more attention to detail is spent on the fact that you need to keep yourself fit, and it's not just as easy as how it used to be.
Yeah.
So started a routine of that, and it's strange to think now when I go back to Somerset, the first thing I'm doing, well, not the first thing, but one of the things I'll be doing is looking at the Ordnance Survey map and going, right, where am I going for a run when I'm down there? Like this weekend, I'm going to Frome, and I've already plotted 3 routes that we'll be doing probably on the weekend, and like you can obviously just step out the door and go, but there's something really fun about the planning stage of it, and getting the map up and having a think like I'm going to go here, and just seeing where the trail connects and what kind of loop that creates, and then what pub is going to be at the finish, or what and what's the story all around that. So that whole part of it, that journey is really important to me, I think.
And it must be quite thrilling, we'll come on to this, but to translate that, or to take that process, that route planning process, and then gift that to other people in the form of a race or a meetup, or
for sure. And it's strange for me in some ways to, I think you've always got to think about how you used to be. Like I never used to realise that Ordnance Survey maps really existed. I just thought they were these orange things that my mum had on a bookcase at home. And you go on Google Maps and you want to go for a walk or a run, and there's nothing. It doesn't give you anything. It just gives you roads and green bits, and it doesn't give you anything that connects between.
Yeah.
And then as you learn that Ordnance Survey maps exist, and there's lots of apps and things, and Strava will show you, but what I love about just showing people an Ordnance Survey map and the app is like, just look on there, and the bits that are green, the green lines, that's where you can go running.
Yeah.
I mean, as a simple principle, it's like, just look where the green lines are. Those aren't roads, those are footpaths, and they're everywhere. And once you sort of unlock that, I think that's something that, you don't need to come on a Runaway Adventures meetup maybe after that. And when I think what we try and do with Runaway, with our meetups, it's not about you come every time and you stay doing that for many, many years. And, that's nice because you create a community and people that you know and you recognise. But I think for me, it's okay if someone comes on it once and they sort of unlock this potential of, okay, I can just get on the train and I can go running, and like they just do it on their own, or they do it with their friends after that, and that's absolutely fine. And I think a lot of people do that. They come on a few and then they realise, actually, there's no magic to it. It's a bit time consuming, but the information's out there, and it's just putting in a bit of time on a Thursday or Friday before the weekend to get your planning done.
So one of the things that's like a recurring theme on this podcast is that, as you've touched on, living in London, and the southeast in general really doesn't have to be a barrier to adventure or the great outdoors or things like that. And I can honestly think of nobody who epitomizes that message more than you. Just to list some of the races that you've got, if you're watching the video, you'll be able to see the array of medals that are in front of Chris. But you've got the Chiltern Ridge 50k, which is still going, right?
Yeah, it's in its fourth year this year. Yeah.
That's the original, right?
That's the one. Race. Yeah, that's the first one.
And then you've got the half that accompanies that, which is now in a slightly different location. You've got the Greensand Country Ultra Trail, which I volunteered at last year, which is an amazing race up in Bedfordshire. You've got the North Chilterns 50k. Was that was new last year?
No, that's new this year.
So that's not been held yet.
Yeah, so that's hot off the press. Yeah,
and that's in a slightly. That's not it's in an area that doesn't spring to mind as outdoorsy, right? It's near Luton.
Yeah, it's near Luton, and if you look on a map of the Chilterns, you've got the Chilterns.
Yeah.
And then you've got Luton, and then you've got this other bit of the Chilterns that everyone ignores.
This exclave.
Yeah, to the east of it. And, no one goes there at what? The locals go there and they love it, and they tell me how amazing it is. And Tim, who's been the sort of main route planner for that, has been raving about it. And I've gone down and had a look, and you've got the Barton Hills and Pegston Hills, and you've got all of these amazing areas, but no one really travels there. And it's not the easiest place to get to by train, so maybe that's one of the reasons. But everyone goes to Tring, Wendover, Goring in the Chilterns. So we're going, let's focus on this poor deprived bit of the Chilterns, which is just as beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, we were talking about this earlier, but we want to bring races in the calendar that aren't replacing ones that are already there, that aren't the same, the same offering that's already there. Because
does anyone need another North Downs Way 50k?
I don't
think
they do.
Yeah, yeah. But you've also got another one this year that's new, the Suffolk Coastal Path.
Yeah, the Suffolk Coastal Path.
That's really interesting. So that's going to be pretty much flat, right? Pancake flat.
Yeah, I think maybe 48 meters of elevation gain.
Oh, okay, so not flat.
Which is, I mean, that's probably just a sort of a GPS
that's like a
fluctuation, isn't it?
A 0.01% gradient or something.
Yeah, but that race, it's don't get the impression it's you start on the promenade and you finish and you just run in a straight line. There's lots of kind of really nice inlets where you're going into forests and you're going around different areas, because the path has to come inland before you get to Southwold. So the race starts in Lowestoft and ends in Aldborough, and you've got kind of Southwold in the middle, but the section between Lowestoft and Southwold, it goes inland a bit.
Right.
So you've got the proper kind of trail running experience.
I was going to say it's not just 50k of sand and
no. In fact, I mean, there's less than a kilometre on sand or soft ground,
right?
Because that's unpleasant. I mean, no one wants to run on sand, and some people want to run for it in for 6 days in MDS.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So what else have you got? You did the Hughenden half and quarter a couple of weeks ago. That's coming back next year.
So that was new. That's coming back.
In Buckinghamshire.
Yeah, that's it's in a beautiful area, and there's kind of areas that we want to expand that to as well. So Hughenden National Trust Estate, and then the area around it is amazing. And this year we did a half and a quarter marathon, and it was one 10.6k loop that you could run once or twice. What we're hoping to do, once we can sort of get a bit of a lay of the land in Bradenham and some kind of different, so there's Knapp Hill Common and a few different areas. Basically, they've been doing loads of forestry work over the last 6 months, and it's always a bit muddy in that area, but it's been the worst it's ever been.
Yeah.
So when we return next year, hopefully it's going to be a bit more adventurous and a bit wider, a bit of a bigger loop. That's the plan.
I have to say it was quite cool to run a quote unquote shorter distance trail race, because generally speaking, trail races sort of start at the half marathon distance. And it's quite nice to just go all out on a trail and see what that's like,
Yeah, for sure. And it's fascinating as an organizer to watch that as well, because you start people off on a 50k, and you're waiting 3 or 4 hours until you see anyone again at the start finish, and then you see one or two, and then maybe it's 5 hours before most people are there. With this, it was 45 minutes, and people were you were tearing to the finish line.
Yeah.
So that was great, yeah. I love racing the shorter distances as well, but there's also there's something really nice about the long distance that you just know that, you know, even if I'm not feeling it for an hour, you're going to come into your element at some point. And sometimes it takes 2 hours to start feeling good, but you know, and then you're in.
Yeah, I'm yet to run one of your actual ultras, but I fully intend to at some point. So I want to talk a bit about what goes into like putting on a great race. You've touched on like location and finding unexplored areas and building routes. How is it working with landowners, particularly given that we're in the southeast, which is one of the most crowded corners of the UK?
Yeah, it's complex, that's for sure. I mean, you've kind of got to judge and balance lots of different elements. So yeah, you've got to have a good event base. And ideally for us, that's somewhere that is accessible by car and train, which hasn't been possible for all of them so far, but I think that's something we try and do. And then you also want it to be somewhere that you can kind of customize and put your stamp on it. So I like just hiring a field, really, because although it's maybe more work because you have to hire everything in, you can make it whatever you want it to be, rather than if you just go to a sort of bespoke event place and you know, maybe they have everything there, but it's not quite how you might want it. So yeah, you find that, but then you start going, right, we need a 50k loop, and so everything pretty much is always on public rights of way. Mm-hmm. So that's the key principle, is everything's on public rights of way, and therefore we as an organizer have a right to organize an event on that. But that doesn't mean you just turn up on the day and you don't ask anyone. You then sort of go through a process of going, right, I'm on a 50k route. You might be having a look at, right, you're going to have to talk to the council. You're going to have to talk to big landowners, maybe like the National Trust or Forestry, Natural England, those kinds of people. And then you're talking to small owners, so you're talking to farmers, you're talking to different private landowners that have whatever they're doing there, and you're passing through their land. So you talk to them, and then you're sort of negotiating, I suppose, with getting them on your side, because I think the thing we struggle with is people have an expectation of what a running race looks like in their head, which isn't what we put on. So people, when they think, and this isn't saying people are stupid and it's no fault of their own, but I think when you say we're organising a race, people see London Marathon. They see thousands in their head. They see thousands of people running at speed,
like throwing water bottles.
Throwing water bottles on the floor and being really, really disrespectful to the land. And I think as soon as you communicate to them what you're trying to do, and it's a small event, that people are self-sufficient, they carry their own water bottles with them, and you kind of go into it, 99% of the people we've spoken to are amazing and supportive, and they want it to happen, and they let us put signs up, they let us have marshals, or they might let us have a checkpoint out, and they support the event, and that's fantastic. And what's really difficult is when you get that 1% where someone just goes, no, we don't really want you coming through. And although there's sort of like a legal right of, well, it's a public right of way and we could, that's not really, from an anxiety perspective, I don't want to be organising an event where I know I'm passing through land that someone doesn't want me there. Now, if then that happens, you have to look at, okay, where do we reroute? And then that changes everything, because you've got to keep it still, let's say at 50k, and you've got all your checkpoints. So there's that fine balance. Is it can all look like it's perfect, then one problem arises, and then suddenly you need to either find new aid station locations, or you need to lengthen on one side, shorten on the other, which then leads you to talking to new landowners that you didn't. So it's that art is really difficult, and we've a few races we've sort of improved year on year, I think. And I think the Chiltern Ridge is one of those where we started in one location and we were there for 3 years, and this year we've moved to a new location because we feel like that gives us a much, much better chance of being able to keep the race as it is for years and years to come. And I think, fingers crossed, I think where we're at now is the perfect base, the perfect route, and should be the same for many years to come. Mm-hmm. That's the plan anyway.
And then you've decided on a route, you've plotted it and you've opened up entries, you are also promoting all your own events on your amazing website, which I encourage people to look at. What's the address for that?
So it's runawayadventures.com is the address.
It's a beautiful website, and also obviously social media and all things like that. Do you have a team for that? Do you have people who help you out, or is it all you behind the website?
It's all me. It's a one-man band in terms of the website. That's pre-Runaway Adventures. That was my trade, and it still is to some respect. But sort of, I've come from the world of technology, and that gives me a little bit of a head start, I suppose. But you've still got to put the effort in. It's probably taken. I mean, we relaunched this website with a new system, a new everything, last autumn, and I would say it took me the best part of 3 months, working on it every day to put that together. And now it's working like a finely tuned machine. But yeah, it's something that we've got to, you have to work hard on. And I think you can't. Where are you promoting your events if you're not promoting them on your website and on social media? It's pretty much the only place people are looking. You've got places like Find a Race and Let's Do This and those sorts of companies, and we use them to help us sell entries and get awareness. But those providers take a cut on every sale that is made through their website. So I think driving direct traffic and having people go direct to our website and any trail organizer's website is really, really important if you know it exists, because you maintain the majority of the entry fee. And small organizers like ourselves, I think it's difficult to get that balance right. Of we never want to organize an event where we prioritize quantity of entries over the quality of the event. I would rather have 250 people at 50k and make sure that I can control every element of it, and also not cause too much disruption to local people on that day, than have 1,000 people and make a lot more money, but not provide that same experience. And that's not really what the company was set up to do. So that's kind of gives us a bit of that keeps us in check, if you like, because we have to be quite conscious of our spending.
Yeah.
And that's where the website comes in. Being able to make this myself is a huge cost saving that allows us to function as a business at the sort of level that we do.
Yeah, it's a really awesome website, and it's really interesting to see a site that feels like a very modern 21st century website. It's not clunky, it's very functional, because a lot of the websites, some of them are great, but a lot of websites when you're booking events and stuff can be pretty clunky and old school, and use systems that feel like you're signing up to sort of a gym in 1995.
Yeah.
So to have a system that's just like fluid, and it really adds to the whole experience.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really proud of it, to be honest. And I mean, we're always trying to improve it. I think since we've relaunched it, we've had, as I say, when we first started, it was just meetups. Then we started organising races. And I think we went from, so the initial website was runawayuk.com. And that was basically, it had a focus on the meetups, and then we started the Chiltern Ridge, so I bought chilternridgeultratrail.com.
Yeah, because you used to have a separate website for each race.
So we put that on there, and then the green, and I think, September last year, I counted, we had 7 separate websites.
That's got to be costly.
And, well, it was costly, but it was also diluting everything, because if you've run the Chiltern Ridge and you loved it, and you go back to the website, although you can sort of link and say, oh, there's more races available here, they're all in different places, and
it's a disruptive experience. Like brand-wise, it's like, what's going on? There's multiple websites.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a really tough decision for me, because I think what's so important about a trail running event, and particularly an ultra marathon, is making it special. It is a special thing. The majority of people running our events, our 50k events, are running their first ultra.
Yeah.
And I don't want the sort of brand of that race to feel like, oh, it's just another event that Runaway do. Mm-hmm. I think it's really important that each one has its kind of recognizable logo, and the medals are unique to that event, and everything feels unique to that event. Obviously, everything crosses over in terms of the organization, but the behind the scenes things. But I think when I had it separate, I think that's that creates that kind of journey where you're doing that race. You know, you when you sign up to UTMB, you go to the UTMB website, and you're not going to a group's website and you're clicking on one page. And I think bringing it all together, I was quite nervous really of sort of going, well, now it feels like it's just lots of smaller events. So yeah, that's been interesting. But I think
I can see why you would worry about that, but I think it really actually strengthens each event to know that they're part of this family of events. And on the branding front, I want to come onto it in terms of the race day experience, but you know, I'm thinking of other big players in the south like Centurion, obviously, and the guys over at Camino. It really feels like what makes these companies and yours strong is not just that you're putting on great events, but you found your sort of brand, if you like, and not just in terms of how it looks, but how the events play out. And it's hard to put your finger sometimes on what a brand is, but with Runaway, it does feel like you're tapping into something that is needed around London.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of the sort of the experience as something being very, very grassroots. I think you've kind of got two elements to any event. You've got the sporting side of it, which is the fact that you've trained for weeks and months to be there, to actually get there on the event day, and your ability to finish the race and your time that you get is really important and should be celebrated. And it doesn't matter if that's the first person or the last person or where that is, because it's all relative to that individual. But to celebrate that sporting side and get that right, so make sure the signage is good enough that you can focus on your running. Make sure that the kind of experience of turning up and car parking and picking up your bib and everything is just there for you, that you can focus on you know, giving your best on that day. But then on the other side, you've kind of got the entertainment side of things, which is once you've finished, you don't just want to go home and sit on the sofa and look through your phone. You want to hang out. And I think that's why we do 50k events more than we really would do. I'm not ruling it out in terms of longer events, but what's so nice about a 50k, and even this is better than on a half marathon, because in a half marathon you don't feel like you've justified your afternoon of drinking some beer and taking the rest of the day off.
Yeah.
But when you finished a 50k, you're kind of giving yourself license to, I'm good for the rest of the weekend. I'm taking it proper easy. So trying to provide that sort of experience at the finish where you can sit around and there's food and there's drinks, but not taking that or not making that the main focus, but just having that there. And I think that's what we try and do. And I think by keeping it quite small, it almost creates this kind of feeling of a bit like a village fete.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not, so you kind of, there's a collective reason why you're all there, and a lot of people know each other. Like, you know, everyone might know each other in a village, and everyone's sort of mingling around, and there's this lovely buzz, particularly I think in an ultra, between about 2 p.m. and about 3 p.m. when the majority of the people are sort of finished and they're sort of telling stories about the day. That buzz is really, really special. And I think that's why I don't want to go too big, because I think the bigger that you go, you change that quite dramatically. I think you can obviously go a little bit bigger, but as soon as you go too big, it feels too, actually there's too many people here, and you kind of want your own space. You don't want to be too crowded at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I've made at least 4-5 friends through Runaway, which is that's like half my friends. So it's been good. It's funny that you talk about the experience of something that you're crafting, because it's something that, you show up to an event and it might just seem like this event is just here and it's just happened and it's just, that's what it is. And obviously you forget that so much work has gone into putting it on. And I'm thinking, if you think of the spectrum of events from like the Barclay Marathons on one end, where it's like you've got nothing, and then like, I don't want to point fingers, but something like the London Marathon, where, there's a huge amount of support, you get a goodie bag, there's water stations, there's everything. Sort of picking where you're going to sit along that spectrum must be a really interesting proposition. Is that a science? Is that an art? Is that just something you sort of discover as you do events and figure out?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably trial and error, but I also think it's what your motivations are of the event. And certainly if you look at big events, that is a year-long job for that organizational team. So, any of I mean, it changes a little bit. I mean, you've got companies like Centurion and like Aria. I think it's Aria Running that do a few of the bigger, the Dragon's Back and things like that. And,
Right. Yeah.
and they've got lots of events. But if you look at the massive events, it's like we finish the first event and we just go again. It's like everything, and it's.
I mean, UTMB. I can't imagine what goes into organising that.
For sure, it's endless. So I think. For me, it was always about, I didn't want to do one big event. It was always lots of smaller events because that keeps it fun for me.
Yeah.
It's really cool to be one week doing a half marathon, a National Trust estate, and then the next it's doing something on the coast in Suffolk. It kind of, it shapes your year a bit. So yeah, I think it's what you want it to be, but then you kind of, you sort of find your way. I mean, Runaway Adventures in general, I think, reflects my personality initially, but then all of the people that have been involved in it over the last 5 years, which is we don't shout about what we do. We aren't carrying glow sticks. We aren't playing loud music. We aren't trying to kind of create an image for other people to follow necessarily. We're just doing what we enjoy doing. And obviously, you post stuff on social media and you do portray a certain amount of sort of outward imagery, but it's not something that we focus on because that's not the core element of why we love running. Isn't about the photos and about the sort of the way that it's portrayed. It's just about that feeling that it gives you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I want to do as an organizer and a runner myself, is just create moments where you feel amazing while you're running. And there are days that you feel absolutely terrible when you're running, when you're training. Sure. And I think these races kind of culminate those great days training and those hard days training to this kind of celebration. And that's I think what we try and focus on is, and if we can do that, I don't think it matters how much we post on Instagram. People will sign up to more races, and that's the kind of key focus, is just maintain that. Don't keep our eye off the ball on that, really.
Yeah, you can't overestimate the power of word of mouth as well when it comes to stuff like that. And I don't know who said the quote, but there's a quote that I really like, which is that racing is your reward for training. And sometimes you go to races and it doesn't feel like much of a reward, but yours definitely feel like a celebration and a reward.
Wow. I mean, it depends who you are, doesn't it? I mean...
yeah, you can have a bad day, of course. But I mean, I volunteered last year at the Greensand Country, which is this amazing race in Bedfordshire. Beautiful, flat, quite unique landscape. And just seeing the runners come through, it was an amazingly hot day. I don't know if you remember, it was like 32 degrees or something.
Yeah, it was... What was strange about that year is we had done the Chiltern Ridge 3 weeks before, where we were all in hats, gloves, full waterproofs. It rained for 3 days straight, and it couldn't have felt colder and more miserable. And then, 3 weeks later, Greensand, the marquees had basically only just finished drying. We're hanging them up on, you can see up here, there's sort of like ropes up there, or sort of hanging... because there's not much room in here, so I was like,
clever way to store ropes.
Like hanging a marquee up there, trying to wait for it to dry, and then Greensand we turned up and it was like 27 degrees, and it hadn't been that hot at all that year. So no one that turned up had done a single training run in anything like that heat. It was. I was going. I mean, it was
stunning though. It was a stunning day. It was blue skies
for sure. The photos came out pretty good. Yeah,
it was one of those days where every photo you take is incredible. It was properly a highlight of last year. I mean, we were still sort of in the last throes of the full-on pandemic, and it was quite unique to be out and seeing people and running, and it was such a thrilling day.
We were still there doing the rolling start window, so all of that was still in place, and that was the last race of the year we had to do that. But it was still very new to people sort of coming back into that, and you could feel that a bit actually when people are sort of turning up and everyone's arriving and everyone's sort of standing socially distanced, and there's this kind of anxiety about being there, not just because you're running 50k, but also we haven't really hung out all together in big groups for so long.
It was a special year for running in that regard, actually. I want to talk about meetups. Just because that is where Runaway started. How many meetups do you think you've organised now? Do you have a number for that?
Yeah, we do. There's sort of many levels of meetups, but the core, the sort of Sunday long run, get on the train, go somewhere, go to the pub, come home. Yeah. I think we're on 97.
Oh, wow.
So we're coming close to the 100.
So the 100 must be scheduled.
The 100, I think the 100 is scheduled as the June event, I believe.
Oh, I'm definitely going to come to that.
But we're not doing We're not doing anything special for that.
No, not doing a 100 miler or something.
No, I mean mainly because I'm going to Oregon for 3.5 weeks, and then I get back, and 2 days later it's that. And
Amazing.
So, I mean, Tim's, who's one of the other guides and organisers, and
Tim Mills.
Tim Mills, yeah. You see, I mean, Tim Mills has been a huge part of Runaway for probably most of it for about 4 years. He came to the second ever meetup as a participant, and just wanted to get involved. No, couldn't get rid of him, and yeah, so he's the one that loves running in Bedfordshire.
Yeah, he's the Bedfordshire advocate, the trail runner of Bedfordshire.
But no, Tim's doing that. But we've got an idea of doing something for the 100 sort of celebration that will probably be late summer, and it might just be in the end just a barbecue or something, but just something to sort of celebrate it, because for us it would be a big milestone, definitely.
You've touched on this, but are people often surprised by, because you've listed so many places, the amount of greenery that is accessible from London?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yes and no. You've got two sides of the coin. You've got people who come on our runs that just know these amazing places exist, but they just don't necessarily have the time or the motivation to do the route planning. So they so I do it, or Tim does it, or someone does it, and that's great, and they don't have to think about it. And then you've got other people who are sort of just unsure that this is kind of possible. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, of like, as soon as you sort of realise that it's not anything particularly special. It's just knowing how to do it. And if you're not particularly in London, we have loads and loads of international runners coming and joining meetups, and when you've moved, if you've moved to London and you don't know how the transport system works, you probably just don't necessarily just think to just try it, because it's quite daunting. And even so what we've always done with our meetups, and I think this is really important, is if you want to, on the website you can buy train tickets on the website, and then on the morning I buy your train ticket and I just give it to you.
Right.
And it sounds pretty simple, right?
I was going to say, have you integrated with Trainline or something?
No, I just take this. I just look up what the price is.
Yeah.
Although I got stung by that, because they just raised the prices, and all of my prices were set at last year's rate, so I've had to raise them to this year's rate. But yeah, I just check the prices, and I just say, right, if you want a train ticket, it's this much, and I'll sort it out. And you can buy it also at a discounted rate as a group ticket, mm-hmm. which would be the same as if you got a rail card. But yeah, if you kind of if you're saying, right, we're going to Biggleswade to run tomorrow, we're getting on this train, you need to sort your tickets, it's a barrier to someone signing up, because that's potentially a stress to get up and work that out. So we just try and take care of everything. And that's where the value is, and I think that's why we charge for it, because what we're really saying when you're paying £10 to come on a meetup is, the moment that you sign up to the moment that you get back home, we will look after you. We will go and recce the route before we go, make sure it's decent, make sure there's no kind of surprises, make sure that we're not going to get lost on the day. We sort your train tickets and make sure that happens. And then we take you on the run. We find a nice pub, hopefully. I mean, there's not always a nice pub, but we find a pub. Sometimes you just got to go with what's there. Yeah. But you find a pub and you have a cheese toastie or whatever they offer you, and then you get on the train home, and that's the experience, really. And you're not paying to go for a run. You're kind of paying for everything that you get as part of that.
And then the people you're going with is a huge part of it.
And the people, and the conversations you're having with them. And I mean, and that for some people, I think, definitely for me, I always say I probably would never sign up to one of my own meetups. Probably just wouldn't be for me, because as what that appears in terms of what you see, there's a lot of anxiety attached to that. I'm not someone who jumps into awkward social or difficult social situations. I like to be in a comfortable social position. So to just, particularly go on your own, turn up at Marylebone Station and know that you need to sit on a train for 50 minutes.
Invariably, you spot another runner on the train and have to figure out if you're going to talk to them or not.
Yeah, and you've got 50 minutes maybe sat next to that one person, and then you've got a run that might take 2 or 3 hours. Then you're in the pub, then you're on the train home. So it's 6 hours of chatting to people that you've never met before. And I mean, for me, it would always be that idea of that is quite daunting. But then as soon as you do it, you just realize why you're there and how brilliant it is. And I think it's the same. When you'd go to a party when you're younger and you'd be a bit nervous before, and then you get there and you have the best time of your life.
Yeah, or not even when you're younger. Every time.
Yeah.
No, I totally get that. I mean, I love meeting new people and I thrive on it. But you do, the morning of a meetup, you might be like, am I really going to trek across London at 7 o'clock in the morning? And it's always worth it, always.
For sure. Yeah, and that's what I'd say. Anyone listening who's like, I probably wouldn't do that because would be feel out of my comfort zone. It's like as soon as you get on the train, everyone's just chatting about running. Yeah. And, it's like I could talk about running if I had to. If we did this podcast for 24 hours, do you reckon we could just...
That's what we're doing. Do you not know that? That's why I've got beard. Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's why I started the podcast, because I can't talk about running enough. Yeah. So I need to find people to talk to. As you touched on, you are a one-man band. I mean, you have an amazing team of volunteers and people who help you out, but a lot of it you do yourself. What is it that motivates all this? Where does that come from, do you think? Is it the logistics? Have you got an engineer's mindset to it all? Or is it the human side of it, the thrill of the event itself? Or is it everything in a package?
I would say... it comes back to sort of when I went to university, right? So I did a course called Digital Art and Technology, and I remember I went to the open day, and I was thinking of doing 2 courses at this university. One was going to be like a web developer's application development, and they would teach you like all of the important programming languages in whatever year this was, 2010, I don't know, whatever, ASP.NET, languages that no one uses anymore. Anyway, so they would just teach you all of that, and then you would use all of that knowledge, and then you would go away and you would make all your web applications. And at this course, he was like, what we do here is you just come up with things that you want to make. So you want to make a heart rate monitor that makes some graphics move on a projector. Cool. Learn how to do that. And it was switching. It was basically like, right, that's what you want to do. Now work it all out. So go away and you might need to learn how to do some electronics or a particular programming language. And they would support you in doing that. But it was just flipping. It was like idea first, application second. And I think that's always what's fascinated me about starting a company or a business or whatever it is that desire to sort of learn how to do something that you don't know how to do. That kind of is what excites me, I suppose. It's like 2017, I had absolutely no idea how to organise a trail running event.
Yeah.
I had probably run 5. And then 2019, I'm organising a 50k and a half marathon at the same time in the Chilterns for 200 people.
Yeah.
And and it went fine. So there was no issue with it, but it's learning all of those new skills. And then what's beautiful about the whole process, and you find this with anything, is every time that you then do something from then onwards, it gets easier and more enjoyable. And the first time it's obviously very, very stressful. And I think that's what sort of motivates me, and why we're starting new events all the time, but also just try and do different things. Like we were trying to launch this thing called Runaway Global 2.5 years ago, and Runaway Global was the sort of meetups, but sort of multiplied into this sort of international experience where you go and run a race together. And I think there's a massive... So, I'd recently run this race in Norway. Best experience of my life, running-wise, to date. And that kind of journey, that whole experience of, like, getting on the plane, going out there, and doing everything that's really quite new is amazing. But so many runners can't do that because, they don't have any friends necessarily. A lot of people do, but they might not have any friends that like running. So if you're like, I want to go and run a 50-mile race in Norway, I'm not just going to go on my own. That's not particularly enjoyable, and I could try and find. So we just said, right, let's do that whole process where we just do everything, and we provide an environment where
so you're not hosting the race,
not hosting
but
the
you're
race.
going to it together.
So we organised this whole thing for a race called the Fjäll Marathon, which is a Swedish marathon, really famous marathon distance race in Sweden that I still haven't yet been. So we contacted the race director, we got entries for 12 people sorted, we booked this amazing hotel, we booked all the flights, and then it all got cancelled because of coronavirus, and we had everyone ready to go. And that was basically going to be this kind of, we don't hold your hand, but it's just like, you don't have to worry about how do I get from the airport to the hotel, where do I pick up the race bib, where it's good to eat the day before, and all of that.
And just the anxiety of being on your own.
And then having 12 other people who are all out there, and also, then we're not organising the race, so that's taken care of by a professional organiser with a great reputation. And it was, it's also a race that not necessarily you would have heard about or known about. So we're hoping to relaunch that soon, where we can start doing, maybe 1 or 2 trips a year, where we say, right, here's this niche race you've never heard of in Italy. We're going there. Do you want to come? And we'll take a group of 12 people, and that, I think that again is like, I've done a lot of traveling in my previous work, so I'm very adept to getting on a plane and being in a hotel and just sort of trying to find my way around in an unknown environment. So I'm good at that, and then I'm good at organising things. So it's just bringing those two things together, but ultimately to give people an amazing experience at a trail race that maybe they wouldn't go to normally.
Is there anything else on the horizon long term for Runaway? Like, where do you see this in 5 years, or are you more about just sort of taking each step, taking each race as it comes?
I think where we are now, so there's 7 races that we've got. I think we'll keep it there for now.
Yeah.
And
because that's a lot, right? I mean, a company like Centurion doesn't organise much more than that.
No. And I know what I'd say to that is 4 of those are 50Ks. Three of those are shorter. So the shorter events are, from an organisation perspective, much easier. I mean, they still take time, but on the event day, you're looking after 21 kilometres of trail for about 3-4 hours. Compared to 50k of trail for 8-9 hours, so the variables are reduced. So we'll probably keep it there in terms of number of events. But I think what's recently what's got me really, really tempted for is the Chiltern Ridge. By far is the most popular event. Has sold out 4 times in a row with 3 or 4 months to spare. Yes, we could increase capacity, but as we've talked about, that's not really the idea. But what I'm thinking, and what I'd love to just test out, is the Chiltern Ridge Winter Edition, and seeing what that same route looks like, in December.
Yeah.
Or late November or whatever it is, but in those sort of dark, difficult conditions where everything's a bit different. And actually for some people it's where they come into their element, because people who like to suffer tend to thrive in those environments.
Like Jason Cuddy would be quite good at that event.
Maybe, yeah. We'll see.
He likes suffering.
We'll see. It's certainly a top 10. I'm yet to see Jason on a podium, but it's coming. It's coming.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. I'm trying to think of, so it's sort of the Ivinghoe Beacon area, right?
Yeah.
I think I've run through that. What's the wood around there called? Ashridge.
Ashridge, yeah.
That gets quite choppy in winter. It gets quite muddy because there's a race there in March.
Yeah, no, it gets seriously muddy. I mean, once you're up on the ridgeway, you're fine. That drains really well. But yeah, Ashridge Forest and that area, you just can't avoid it. And
I mean, it's part of the winter running experience.
And I think that's what the race is. The race isn't you're going to have a nice easy run. It's going to be a graft. But you look at races like Arc of Attrition, which, I mean, who would want to do that? But I'm thinking about it, and everyone's thinking about it.
It's bizarre. Yeah.
So and that always comes back to us as runners, isn't it? Is what if I tried this? And if you've done a 50k or a 50 mile or a 100 mile, you are looking at what's the next step up.
Would you ever think about organising a 100 miler?
We've thought about it already.
Yeah.
And what we'd like to do at some point is a Chiltern 100 mile that takes in, I mean, we've plotted it on the map, it's possible, and you can take in basically every brilliant hill and area in the Chilterns in one big loop. And no one really does that at the moment. You have got 100-mile races in the area, but there's not one which hits basically all of the key Chilterns sites.
Yeah.
The problem that we've got with that, and it's the big barrier to all of these events, is getting agreements with landowners and maintaining signage on the trail. So we can get agreements with landowners. It will obviously take a lot longer for 100 miles than it would be, but we can do that. That's not the issue. But once you've got that, and then you put all your signs out, it's how do you mark 100 miles and collecting 100 miles without growing your team massively. And if we grow our team, there's a cost associated to that. It's, although we do love it when volunteers come to help, we tend to pay most of the people that come and help out. And by doing that, we sort of guarantee a level of service.
Yeah.
And sort of people who have now, we've got a great team of about 20 or 30 people that have come and helped at events. And when I say pay them, we're not paying them big wages for the day, but something that just respects their time, and says to them, maybe come back and help us again. And through that, we've got a great team. But then to do that on the 100 miles is just I would like to at some point, and it's just gaining that level of confidence that we can do it in a way that the level of service is as good as it should be. So not next year, maybe the year after, maybe soon. I mean, if we could do it tomorrow if it wasn't marked, because we've got everything we need to do, and it's just a case of a longer event. But I think for us, marking the course makes it accessible and makes it makes it into a running race, I suppose, not a navigation race. And there's a beauty to races that require navigation. I think those races are amazing as well, but that's not what we offer, and I don't think we want to offer that for the time being anyway.
I volunteered last year at the Thames Path 100, and it was an amazing experience, not just to see the runners, but to see the logistics that went into it and see the tail runners coming through, picking up the signs. And that's an event that for the runners could span 14 to 32 hours, but for the event organizers it's like a 60-hour thing. It just, I don't know how they do it. It's incredible.
No, I don't either.
But no, I mean, I'm thinking of doing my first 100 in the next few years, so maybe it'll be with Runaway.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with hundreds, isn't it, is when you've got a mate doing 100 and on a Saturday they start, and you're having your breakfast, and then you go for a little run, and then you go and do your 10 miles, and then you're tired, and then you go to the pub, and then you watch your football team, and then you go to sleep, and then you wake up the next day and they're still running.
Yeah.
And that's something else, isn't it?
Incredible. It's similar to another extent with backyard ultras, which I know you've talked about potentially organising.
For sure, yeah. We're definitely thinking about it. Tim and I are actually meeting someone on Wednesday next week at a potential location.
Dude, I'm in. I'm so in.
So, and again, like that, we're saying, who cares how many people turn up? If it's 15 people, it doesn't matter. It's just all about... It's all about just getting the right people that want to do that and just putting it to the challenge and seeing what happens. Really.
Well, also the thing to think about with that format is that it's so popular now that you get a lot of people who take it very seriously. Who they don't show up to see how far they can go. They show up to win, to go to Big's backyard. Yeah,
it's difficult turning up to a meeting with a landowner and saying, just so you're aware, we can't tell you when this event will finish. All we can tell you is the world record is about 4 days or whatever it is.
Yeah, that is mad. No, I'll be there for sure. My last question, which you actually have sort of already touched upon, but I'm just curious to see what your take on it. What is your favourite place to run in the south of England?
Favourite place to run in the south of England? That section of the Ridgeway from Tring until you get to, let's say, Goring.
Oh, the other way. Sorry, I thought you were going to say to Ivinghoe Beacon.
Well, from starting in Ivinghoe and going west until
a
you get to
long
about
section.
Goring. Just anywhere in that area,
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm happy.
Yeah.
And if not there, even like just Epping Forest or Hampstead Heath. I mean, you can't rule out how great Hampstead Heath is to run in, especially, you know, you go 7-8 p.m. on a weekday, especially once it's got dark. No one's there. They don't lock any gates. Just put the head torch on and go. And then that amazing view you get as you kind of come off Parliament Hill and you've got the whole of London in front of you, just sort of lit up. I mean, you can beat it, but, you know, in London you can't beat it.
Absolutely.
Very easily.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
See you soon.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Chris Brantley as much as I did. Chris is honestly such a nice guy, and if you haven't had a chance to sign up to a Runaway race or meetup, I highly encourage you to do so. I'm really looking forward to running the Chiltern Ridge Half Marathon on the 3rd of July, so do say hello if you're going to be there. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do share it with other people, give it a rating if you can, and remember to follow the podcast on Instagram at outlandish.run for all the latest updates. Next week, I'll be joined by Ali Whitlock. Ali is a Croydon-based ultra runner who this year ran the Thames Path 100, a fast, flat 100-miler hosted by Centurion Running. I spoke to Ali before and after the race to get a sense of what it takes to run that legendary distance, 100 miles.
I don't race very often. You get some people who will be racing every month or twice a month. I tend to race 2 or maybe 3 times a year. And that's partly because I just love running, and so I'm happy just running and doing training runs. But it also means that when I do race, I do put a lot of energy into it, into my training, into preparation, because I want to do the best that I can at the few opportunities that I have.
That was a clip from next week's episode. I really enjoyed both my chats with Ali before and after the race. She is such an ambassador for ultra running and trail running, and I cannot wait to share the episode with you. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You clearly have the endurance necessary to battle your way through an ultramarathon yourself. So, as promised, here are a couple of bonus clips from my chat with Chris. Otherwise, that's me, Ed Scott, signing off. See you next week. Yeah, we didn't mention home run, but that's another thing you do.
Yeah, home run. I mean, so home run is always sort of fluctuating and changing, but we've been doing Wednesday night training sessions all year, which are just sort of coming to an end for the time being, and we're going to take a break for a couple of months as it gets a little bit busier for races and things like that, and then we're going to relaunch home run in the summer when evenings are lighter, nights are warmer, pubs are very desirable, and we're going to put it on tour. So home run has been in Hampstead Heath pretty much. I mean, the initial idea of home run was we're going to do a run from where we're sitting right now. And the reason I was going to do that is because next door there was this amazing pizza place that sold pizza on a Thursday night was going to be. They sell pizza until like 11 p.m. They serve beer. You can get to here very easy on the Victoria line. You've got the Tottenham Marshes, the Hackney Marshes. Yeah. And then the pizza place closed down just as I was about to organise. So I was like, oh, well, that's not very, you need an endpoint. You need somewhere. Yeah. So there's no endpoint. But they're currently building a new place where the pizza place was, which is going to be a Greek restaurant, a Greek like takeaway grill. So that could be the one. Yeah. But no, I think the idea is it's just going to go on tour.
That sounds awesome, man. That sounds so cool. Because you've done a few races overseas. You did one in Croatia like last weekend.
Literally on Saturday. Yeah. Yeah.
How was that?
It was okay. It
Looked brutal.
Yeah, it was. What was daunting is I can't remember who texted me, but someone said, "Oh, this is going to be quite a big run for you," and I went through my Strava and I hadn't run over 20k until 3 weeks ago when I did a race in Epping Forest because I've had a few injuries, and I hadn't run over 25k from more than that race 3 weeks ago since September 2019 when I ran the Chiltern Wonderland Centurion race. And
Oh my
so sort of sitting on the sofa the day before the race going, oh, tomorrow is a 41-kilometre race on trails with a couple of hills, well, not loads, but enough involved. So yeah, took it very easy the first half. And what's always nice about doing that is everyone that goes too fast in the first half,
you see them again.
You can see them again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I went down from 144th to 62nd in the second half of the race, which that was quite fun. So that was nice.
That's a nice graph to plot.
But yeah, I mean, I like doing international race. I mean, it's obviously a bit of a privilege to be able to do that. It's not something that you can do all the time, and I feel really fortunate to be able to do that. And I've got another one this year where as I said earlier, we're going to, first time I've ever been to Oregon, running a race called the Y East Wander 50 mile, which starts at a very early hour in the morning, and it's gonna be daunting, but why not? Why not?
You've done a 50 mile before?
Twice.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
And neither times previously have been anything close to enjoyable. the feeling afterwards enjoyable, but the period between 50 and 80k, not enjoyable
That's
whatsoever.
a long stretch.
Yeah.